It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. As Josh said, I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host, Smitty. Be sure to go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412 and go subscribe to us on YouTube as well. While you're there, you can go down to the description and check out some of the links that we have. We've got year 6 of Rockin' Around the 412, our Christmas fundraiser. It's also our pinned post on X, so you can go check it out on either place, as well as the listening platforms. It's in the description of each of those shows, too. But it's year 6 rocking around the 412. Over the past 5 years, been able to raise over $25,000 with the help of everybody that's donated to be able to provide Christmas for the children in our local 724 and 412 area codes. And as well as partnering with the East Rochester Salvation Army last year to adopt kids off of their angel tree and provide Christmas for those children as well. So if you want to read about that mission, you can go ahead and click that link that we describe it in the GoFundMe. And if you are able to, please do donate. And if you can't, at least share the message. It really helps us out a lot. And while you're also down in the description, check out our Everything Custom Designs links. Our friend Haley Wagner, it's a small business. If you want to help support a small business, she can hook you up with some customized clothing. I know it's probably a little too late. We have been advertising some trick-or-treat bags. We're about like 2 weeks away from trick-or-treat, so it might be too late to get a customized trick-or-treat bag. But luckily, it is the holiday season, so we got Thanksgiving coming up. You can get a kitchen apron for those Thanksgiving Day meals. And then who knows? Maybe she can do some like Santa hats after that or something along those lines for Christmas time.
Some
but
stockings.
I know for sure she can't get an actual hat, but she might be able to do a Santa hat. Different material, different style. You know, I don't know. But what Smitty's wearing right now, if you're watching on YouTube, absolutely not.
Yeah, this is 47 brand, and actually, I just saw picture today. Cole Holcomb wearing this exact same hat out with the kids at Dick's Sporting Goods for the Steelers, partnering up with the Salvation Army. Look at that, with the Salvation Army, the Steelers today, following in our footsteps. No, I'm just kidding. They've been doing that way longer than we have. But shout out to the Steelers, obviously getting in the community. Good stuff as always. And this is the Around the 412 Steelers show. So let's dive into it. It was the bye week, so obviously not a game to talk about on Sunday. But I don't know about you. It almost felt like the Steelers lost anyway, just because of like it was as bad of a bye week as you could have. Raven immediately too, like with a London game, 9:30 in the morning. The Ravens beat the Titans. Cincinnati takes care of Seattle, and Cleveland with an upset win over the 49ers for their first loss in 14 regular season weeks or something like that for the 49ers.
Yep.
Ridiculous. And then not even that. You can expand on this further. Other than Dallas beating LA, the Chargers, in Monday Night Football, every AFC versus NFC game ended with an AFC win besides that one. So, like, even from like a perspective outside of the division, teams you potentially are fighting with for wild card spots, they all won as well. Like the Steelers, basically, they came as close to losing a bye week as you possibly could.
Yeah, for sure. Especially specifically in the division. The Bengals taking care of business against Seattle and the Ravens winning over in London. Those ones were more or less expected, or at least they're more likely. The Browns beating the 49ers, especially
With
even
PJ
though
Walker.
it's in Cleveland, and I understand that it was a rainy game, all that sort of stuff. That's still a shock. Yeah, and like you said, PJ Walker was the quarterback. You only had Deshaun Watson. This is Brock Purdy's first loss in the regular season for the 49ers. It is, like you said, as bad of a week as you could have when you don't play. And I saw you tweet that too, where every single matchup outside of the Monday night, because you tweeted it on Sunday.
Before,
yeah. Every single matchup that was AFC, NFC, the AFC won. And I mean, this just goes to prove the narrative that the AFC is just overall better now. And it's kind of like flipped, because I feel like for a while, like for the past several years, you could have argued that the NFC was a stronger conference, mainly like before Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes really became like the duo of a quarterback, like that tier of quarterback that they are. Like, I felt like the NFC was probably the stronger conference overall, but now it's just so dominated by the AFC. It feels like the NFC feels like the junior varsity to the AFC's varsity. I mean, even the Eagles upsetting they're getting upset by the Jets. That's crazy. I was watching that game, and I mean, shout out to Zach Wilson, BYU guy, by the way.
He hasn't turned the ball over.
No turnovers in 3 games.
Mhm.
He's not the reason that they're winning, but he's also not the reason they're losing.
Yeah.
So that's all you can ask for. That's really what we're asking for from Kenny Pickett right now, too. If we're being completely honest. It was as tough of a bye week for the Steelers as you can get without actually playing a single snap. How does this week affect standing wise? Because I know we haven't.
Yeah, Baltimore's back in first.
Less. Yeah, so they're back in first, but we've still played one less game.
Mhm.
It's a weird dynamic to watch on Sunday. And what is normally a relatively stress-free environment of like you don't have to play, you don't have to worry about the Steelers losing or winning or anything like that, stress-free. But every single matchup is going the way you do not want it if you're a Steelers fan.
I mean, it's a quarterback-driven league, and that's why I think, you do see the disparity between the AFC and the NFC because most of the top, the upper echelon quarterbacks are in the AFC. I mean, you look at the NFC, you got Jalen Hurts, who's had actually not a very good year. I know that they're 5-1, suffered their first loss against the Jets, but you look at him statistically, he's taken a significant step back, in my opinion. That offense has not found their footing. Shane Steichen, obviously leaving to go to Indianapolis, probably knew it was going to take some time with Brian Johnson, the new OC, but they're doing a lot of the same stuff. So, really hard to figure out what exactly is going on there. But behind him, honestly, I think Jared Goff might have a case to be the second best quarterback in that conference right now. With the way he's playing, with the way that team's playing, super impressive. It just seemed like he was kind of like the throw-in, right, of that Matthew Stafford trade, just getting a quarterback back. And we didn't expect him to be the long-term plan at quarterback. Now, you got to be thinking, they're probably thinking about how, getting an extension done with him going into the last year of his deal. But yeah, you look at the AFC, I'll say this. The Jets and Browns, to me, right now as we sit here, and this could change, there's still a lot of season left to play, are the 2 best defenses in the NFL. And that is crazy to say about those 2 franchises.
Well, it's crazy to say about the 2 franchises, and not as much so with the Browns, but like it's crazy that the Jets like are so questionable whether they're going to win a game or not week in and week out because of how bad the offense is most of the time. That you have such a good defense, but you're still questioning it. I mean, we suffer through that as Steeler fans, right? Like for how good our defense can perform, we question whether we're actually going to be able to win a game, not necessarily this game coming up, but just really any game, just because we don't know what we're going to get from our offense. Browns not as much, just because they don't right now, but they did have Nick Chubb, and they do have
They have an offensive identity.
They have an offensive identity. Yeah. Yes, they know what they're doing on offense, and they can win them games. But yeah, it is pretty crazy to see. I think more specifically the Jets, because watching that Eagles game, it is so clear to me how good their defense is, and you can just tell that their offense is basically just trying to do the bare minimum to win the football game, and not lose the game.
They won the turnover battle 4-0, and they win by 1 possession. I mean, that's the way that they kind of have to win games right now. But you keep talking about, or not you, but like people keep talking about being Aaron Rodgers away from being a Super Bowl contender. I still don't know if I'm there though, just because of the play of the offensive line. Like that's what got him hurt in the first place. I still don't think that even you drop him in there, I think they're a better football team, but I don't think that they're still within that upper echelon of the AFC, even with Aaron Rodgers.
I mean, outside of Elijah Vera Tucker, there's not really anybody on that offensive line that I would say is irreplaceable, at least in the current state of their offensive line. I think Elijah Vera Tucker is probably the best at his position on that line, but outside of that, they could do a overhaul of that offensive line if they wanted to really improve their offense, because regardless of any of the skill position players, and no doubt they do have some decent skill position players, they are not just a quarterback away, but they are definitely an offensive line away. Honestly, there's a lot of similarities now that I'm talking through it to the Jets and the Steelers. We are a Steelers show, not a Jets show. But there are a lot of similarities in the sense of you have the defense that can win you games by themselves, or at least keep you in the games until the very end. And then you have the offense where you just need them to do almost the bare minimum in order to win these football games. There's a lot more similarities between the Steelers and the Jets than probably a lot of Steeler fans would want to admit, honestly, because that's not a franchise you necessarily want to always be compared to.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into the Steelers now coming off this bye week. I think that we got to address the elephant in the room first and foremost. Dan Moore coming back from injury this week, and it's still up in the air who's going to play left tackle. I didn't think that we would be in this position. I kind of thought, okay, Broderick Jones, once he's in there, it's unfortunate that it was by injury that he got in there, but I kind of thought once he took over, that was going to be it. He was going to take over for good, regardless of how he played, let alone the fact that he played really well against the Baltimore Ravens. It's kind of unfathomable to me to think that he would revert back to the bench with Dan Moore jumping back in as the starting left tackle. But it sounds like it's possible. Like, we didn't get much from Tomlin today. The depth chart still shows it's Dan Moore, but like, I've been told that's not something to read into. Like, that could change at any time. So for me, I'm not necessarily panicking about anything that's said, but when they practice tomorrow, whoever's getting those first team reps, I think that's going to be very telling.
The depth chart also doesn't show Diontae Johnson on it. So right. I think that's, and actually, if you look on the Steelers website, it shows Calvin Austin twice. It shows him at one of the wide receiver ones, and then he shows him at wide receiver two behind Allen Robinson. So, okay. I mean, maybe that's just waiting to be replaced by Diontae Johnson, but that's just me saying, like, don't necessarily take the depth chart as gospel for what is going to actually be rolled out on Sunday. It would be surprising though to me if they do revert back to putting Dan Moore Jr. in. And the main reason is because of not only how Broderick Jones played, but it's not like Dan Moore Jr. was playing so good that you have to put him back in once he gets back from injury. I think that if you got a Broderick Jones in the Ravens game where he looked really out of place and just absolutely looked lost at left tackle, then that's more of a conversation where you kind of go back to what you started the year with, and what there wouldn't have been as much as a decision to be made. But with your first round pick playing as well as he did in that start, I feel like there shouldn't be much of a conversation about it. I thought Dan Moore Jr. was struggling pretty heavily in the first few games. And so to have this as a discussion, and I mean, maybe I have no idea what Tomlin or the offense is thinking when it comes to this. Maybe they're trying to push Broderick Jones a little bit more in practice this week, or because I feel like maybe he thinks that this will drive him to continue to want to be better, and that he didn't just automatically win the spot based off of one game. But that's also me just kind of like picking at straws and trying to find an answer as to why it's not just an obvious conclusion that after clearly a great start from Broderick Jones, and it clearly probably better than any of the starts that Dan Moore Jr. has had up to this season, why would you just revert back to Dan Moore Jr.? And this kind of goes back to like what we were saying, I think last week, about how obviously Dan Moore Jr. starting was the right decision, but as soon as you make the switch, you don't have to go back to him, especially if Broderick Jones is playing good. And so you made the switch. Broderick Jones has that great start, and I feel like it shouldn't really be up in the air. And this is personal opinion as well. Like, obviously, like, I'm not on the Steelers staff. I'm not as smart as anybody on there. I'm not in the practice or anything. But based off what you saw in the Ravens game and what you saw from Dan Moore Jr., why would you even question going back to him?
Yeah, I think the thing is, too, it's like, okay, say Dan Moore didn't get hurt, but he wasn't playing that well, like what had happened up until he got hurt. And granted, we know he was kind of put through the gauntlet early in the season when you looked at the pass rushers that he went against. But this, like, the bye week is probably where you'd be looking to kind of turn the keys over to Broderick Jones anyway, right? Like, this is the time where you would think Dan Moore's struggling, but again, say the injury wasn't a factor here. You would think this would be the time where you'd be turning to your guy that you hope is your franchise left tackle anyway with the time off. You look at their upcoming schedule, the Rams don't have a guy on the edge that's, I'm not going to say notable, but of the caliber that they've seen here early in the season. I mean, he went against Jadeveon Clowney and handily won that matchup. Granted, Jadeveon Clowney, much better run defender than pass rusher, but he's been pretty solid as a pass rusher even this year too, kind of had a resurgence. Now, after the Rams game, you do have Josh Allen, very good pass rusher, and potentially Harold Landry. Tennessee maybe move. I think he spends more time on the other side, but they will move him around a little bit. So, those two guys, especially Josh Allen. Josh Allen's very good. Harold Landry's good. Josh Allen is kind of in that maybe like 2A tier of pass rusher. But again, like I'm at the point now where I think Broderick has to play. I think it'd be bloody ridiculous to go back to Dan Moore
Bloody.
Jr.
Well, we're going across the pond, are we? Going throwing in some English slurs.
I gotta confess. I told somebody that I would find a way to work that into the show today. So
okay, there you go. I mean, bloody. As long as we're not in the United States, I'm pretty sure I could still mark that this is a not explicit show. So that works out. But yeah, you have a good point. But I think that when we talk about how is Broderick Jones going to get better, I feel like going against a guy like Josh Allen in a couple weeks is a way that he's going to improve. And honestly, like, see what you have with Broderick Jones, because as much as we want to think that like he's what we saw against the Ravens, like that was just one game. So we want to see him on a more consistent basis be able to do that. So start him against the Rams and against the Jaguars, the Titans, like continue to have him as that left tackle to really see what progression that he can make as a player, because he's still very raw. He's still very young, even though he did have a great game against the Ravens. Like we talked about this all in the draft process and after he was drafted by the Steelers, that this is a guy that is not necessarily going to start right away, and he is raw at the position, but his ceiling is much higher than anybody else on the Steelers. And so to get him to that ceiling, I have a hard time seeing how he's going to do that whenever he's on the bench and Dan Moore Jr. is in the game. I would feel much more comfortable. And honestly, I kind of relate it to how we feel about some of the Pirates players too, when we talk about them, like the younger guys. Like sometimes to get better, you just have to get through the growing pains of the top level. So he's going to have to get through some of those growing pains if he has them at this NFL level as a starter. And it's not going to happen, I feel like, just being on the bench on game day and he's going to improve in practice. Practice is not only the only place that you improve. You can improve game in and game out. And we see it with not just him, but like other positions as well. You see guys progress throughout the season. We saw it with Kenny Pickett last year. Obviously, Kenny has reverted a little bit this year, but like look at what he did last year. And it's honestly a very similar situation where we knew that we were going to be starting Dan Moore Jr. We knew we were starting Mr. Trubisky, and around the bye week, that seemed like a good time to make the switch because the starter had been struggling. And so you go to the rookie, and then from then on out last year, we saw Kenny. It was a struggle at first, but then he progressed. And by the end of the season, we had a lot of faith in this guy moving forward. And I think that you should take that approach with Broderick Jones as well. He wasn't the starter in the season, but he's one that you expected to at least make the leap some point into the season as the starter. You're getting to that point. He started in a game. You shouldn't just pull the reins off right now. Continue to throw him to the wolves and see what he can do. That's how he's going to improve, and especially going against some of the best, like you said, with Josh Allen in a couple weeks, if he continues to make those starts, that's how he's going to improve, is going against just those guys. And he gets to go against some of the best in practice as well with Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt, like that's some good, but those guys are on his team. Those aren't the guys that he's going to be going against in the games. So getting those reps in the game, I just think is really valuable for his progression as a player.
I think that we would both be of the mind, even if he were to have played bad against Baltimore, that it was time, because we just expected he's going to take his lumps and he needs to play in order to get better. But that's the thing. It's like, he played so well. So it's like not even a conversation for us as to who you're getting the better play from. Even right now, we know long-term Broderick Jones is going to give you the better play. But even as we sit here right now, it's hard to argue against Broderick providing better play than what you've gotten from Dan Moore Jr. So I think that's why it's like really, because a lot of the times, I think with us being two pretty level-headed people when it comes to the Steelers, whether we agree or disagree with the decision, we can make sense of it. This one, I can make no sense of them going back to Dan Moore Jr.
And that's why I question Tomlin so much. And that's why the only thing that I could come up with, if he's still trying to motivate Broderick Jones and
Alan mentioned this too,
have him in the mental state of like he doesn't just win the job right away. You still have to compete for that job. That's the only thing that I can actually think of, because otherwise, how does that make sense from Tomlin's perspective to go back to Dan Moore Jr.? I just don't know. From a football standpoint, from making your team better, I have no idea how it makes sense.
Yeah, Alan mentioned that too. Maybe it's like a a motivational thing here early in the week, and we'll see what happens as it plays out. Again, this is just Tuesday. They had that bonus day of practice on Monday, but again, that maybe that's something too. Like that's a practice that they typically wouldn't even have. They only practice because of it being coming off the bye week. So were they just getting Dan Moore back into practice just to see how he looked? Who knows? But I think Wednesday, though, is tough because if Dan Moore's still dealing with any type of injury, like if he's still dealing with that at all, you'd assume he'd be limited. Wednesday typically is the day where they would take it a little bit lighter for guys that are dealing with an injury. So maybe it won't be till Thursday that we have a pretty good indication as to who's going to be starting on Sunday. So we will monitor that and wait and see. I looked down at my notes for the show, and somehow it was just recording my voice that entire time talking. So that has all been added to the notes for around the 412. The other thing I wanted to talk about is coming off the bye week. You look at, maybe some things that the team could change internally. Like this is a good, Tomlin talked about it in his press conference today, the self-scouting aspect of things and how are they going to get better? What do you think that like internally they can look to do to improve? Because you look at where the team was last year, and we've talked about it so much. You look at where they were pre-bye week, they go to the bye week, and then they come out of the bye week and play a lot better. Even offensively, they started to be able to run the ball and stuff like that. Obviously, they still weren't scoring 30 points a game or anything like that, but they started to be able to control the clock. And granted, level of competition also much easier for them down the stretch last year, but it's not like their schedule's like a gauntlet this year either, so that could benefit them as well this year. But if you're looking at the team right now, what they've done through 5 weeks, what they've been good at, what they haven't been good at, like what do you think internally they could do to try to come out on the right side of things after the bye week?
I mean, honestly, when I look at the team in general, I think that they are pretty average across the board for the league, like as an entire team. Obviously, the defense is higher and the offense is lower, but that evens out to becoming an average football team. So I think in order to improve off of that, I think honestly, and this might sound like a very simple answer, but I think that some of the execution needs to get improved by just getting to the basics of it. I feel like, especially like when I think of like offensive stuff, I feel like a lot of the offensive problems are maybe it's from like Kenny's perspective, obviously overthinking it or going through his reads wrong. But I feel like overall offensively, I feel like they just really need to get down to the bare minimum of going through their routes or their blocks and their reads of everything. They need to basically simplify the game offensively, which I know is probably something that a lot of people don't want to hear because you look at some of the route charts and all that sort of stuff of the offense and they want it to be more complicated. But I feel like for the offense to be able to succeed, they kind of need to simplify it in a way of just like making it easy for themselves. Like, I don't think that you need to have this complex offensive scheme in order to have a good offense. And Matt Canada doesn't have to have that. And so internally, at least off the offensive side of the ball, that's what I would look for is you just need to simplify what you're doing and look at your 111th and make sure that you are providing your 111th on that offense. I think that you need to simplify your run schemes because there's no way to, in my mind, how do you not have the ability to run the football at this spot of the season? That's something that needs drastically improved. But I just think that everybody needs to basically simplify their position a little bit. And that's what I would improve upon, because I think if everybody does that, then as a whole, it just gets a little bit easier from an offense perspective. And maybe that's not even making sense. But I genuinely think that the game needs to be simplified if they want to improve.
Yeah, and again, that's probably something that like the fan base hears and they're like, what do you mean keep it simple? Like this is about as simple as an offense as you can make it. But realistically, like, is it because they make it so hard for Kenny? And what I mean by that is not utilizing the middle of the field, not really doing what he does well. Like, while it might not be stretching the field vertically, they make things so tough horizontally. Like a throw to the sideline, the way that he's getting it out there is as hard of a throw as you can make. And that is what most of their passing game has been, is throwing the football to the sideline. So yeah, I agree. I think defensively it's going to be more about personnel, right? Like finding a way to mix and match these guys. Obviously, the play that you've gotten from the cornerbacks has not been good enough. And Joey Porter Jr. needs to continue to take on a larger role there. But what does that look like for everybody else when that happens? Is Patrick Peterson going to be able to slide in on the inside and handle that? I don't know. And maybe this isn't something I should even bring up because I don't know if this is anything, if we should read into it. Desmond King tweeted on to the next as we were recording this right now. Was he potentially cut by the Steelers? Because I was going to bring up, is he going to take on a larger role post by? It just doesn't seem like he's in their plans. I don't know what it is. I don't know if he's not been able to grasp their defense or what is going on there, but we were relatively excited for that addition, and it just, for one reason or another, has not panned out. So I don't know whether to read into this or not, but either way, say he isn't, and that's just has nothing to do with football. The dude's played one snap for them so far this year on defense. So not much to go based off of there, and we don't know if he's going to take on a bigger role. The one thing I will say too, like as in terms of an internal addition they could make is, and maybe this is game specific. We don't see him every week, but I mean, we've talked about him so much. It doesn't make sense for Braden Fajoko to not play against some of these teams, like the Ravens. To me, perfect matchup for him to get a helmet. I would have thought the same about the Raiders. The Texans, him not playing, I feel like made sense. But like those two specifically, maybe even the Browns, there's been plenty of games already this year where I'm like, okay, if Braden Fajoko's in there, I think he eases some of this what they're giving up against the run. And, the Rams have run the ball well. They're obviously going to be down their top 2 running backs. They've added 3 running backs just today. So we will see what that running back rotation ends up looking like. I don't know that they're necessarily a team where he would get a hat either. Just they play a lot of, 3 wide receivers. You're going to have to play a lot of base defense against them anyway. Yeah. Same thing with the Jaguars. But against the Titans, like Derrick Henry with that team, that's another one where I would give him a helmet. So, I think that's something internally that they could do to try to help against the run, where they've been very bad now for several seasons in a row. I don't know what to say about like offensively. They've done some good stuff in the run game. They are still dead last in terms of rushing success rate. So there's obviously not a lot to ride home there. Actually, I want to bring that up. I tweeted this, and I just want your take on how insane this is to think about putting this into context. I was going to pull it up on my laptop, but actually it's going to take longer than if I do it on my phone. So the Steelers have invested. Actually, I might even be able to just to think about everything that they've done off the top of my head. So they've invested a first-round running back, traded up for and drafted in the first round a left tackle, paid 2 guards who are the 15th and 18th highest paid guards, have the 14th highest paid right tackle, and drafted a primarily blocking tight end in the 3rd round. All that together, they're still dead last in rushing success. How?
That's the confusing part. The offensive line should not be performing as bad as it has, at least on paper, right? And then when you look at the running backs you have, the combination of Jalen Warren and Najee Harris, they both bring an element that should improve your run game in different ways. Like each of those guys are different. So the combination of what you just said, where on paper they should have a good run game, it is very head scratching why they do not. And a lot of it is probably just execution, more than anything. And that's why I say, like, obviously on paper they should have a good run game, but I feel like it's because a lot of those guys aren't executing. At times, those guards, the center, like basically all across the offensive line, you can pick out on several plays where one or more than one offensive lineman is not fulfilling their assignment. And then there's still been some questioning the plays. I still think that, like, obviously Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, in my opinion, are not to blame fully for the run game. I don't think that the lack of a run game is necessarily on the running backs, especially like a lot of the criticism that Najee gets. I don't think is all on him. I think that's majority on the offensive line. but still, I still think they are fair to criticism. And I think that Najee specifically, sometimes he needs to be less hesitant and just kind of decide and put his foot in the dirt and then go forward. And then obviously Jaylen Warren is what he is. He looks really good in the role that the Steelers use him in, but I feel like you're not going to get what you can get from Najee. Like, he's not going to be a between the tackles runner. So you're limited in that sense of how you can use Jaylen Warren. So I don't know. It is fascinating to me how bad the Steelers run game, when you look at how the personnel they have should have improved it this offseason based off of last season, and it's gotten worse exponentially. And it's really fascinating to see, like, is the offensive line just that poor right now in run blocking, that because it's not just one guy either. Like, there are several plays that you can pick out throughout a game where several of the offensive linemen are not fulfilling their assignment. So that's very questioning. And like I said, I'm not going to make no blame for the running backs, but obviously I feel like there's more of a responsibility on what the offensive line has done right now.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. With those investments that they've made, it kind of makes it's hard not to look at the coaching of those guys, especially when you see guys going elsewhere. Like Kevin Dodson, we knew was a talented dude, especially in the run game. He's the highest graded guard in football right now since going to the Rams. Like, there's obviously something that's not clicking there. Yeah. And, now you just start to wonder, like, I gave Pat Meyer a ton of credit for what he was able to do with the offensive line last year. I thought, they were still void of talent, but I thought they played well above expectation in the second half, and I gave him a ton of credit for doing so. Now, I'm starting to second guess if I want him being the guy that Broderick Jones' future's attached to.
Yeah, I feel like in a situation like this where you're looking at the execution is the main problem. Even though the talent should be there, a lot of that probably has to do with the coaching staff. So I agree with you. I think that's probably a concern moving forward if you are the Steelers. Like, if you don't see any improvement throughout the rest of the season, and granted, like we have a lot of the season left, so there's time to improve. But if you don't start to see that pretty soon, then you're starting to question. Then, like, hey, something's got to change. Obviously, the personnel is not going to change right now, but maybe the coaching needs to, and how these personnel are being coached.
Yeah. Let's talk about this Rams team, though. I want to ask you what you feel like the challenges that they present are. I feel like, you look immediately at them. The obvious one on defense is Aaron Donald. Not a ton of talent on that side of the football for the Rams, but very well coached. Tomlin worded it as they are able to keep the lid on things. They keep everything in front of them. They limit the big plays. I would say similarly, like secondary wise to the Steelers, they just want to keep everything in front of them, catch and tackle type concepts. Offensively, Matthew Stafford has bounced back from his injury a lot better than I thought he was going to. I think he's looked pretty good this year. Cooper Kupp, coming off his injury, has been basically just immediately right back into the mix, looking like his old self, which I didn't know that was going to happen either. And obviously, rookie sensation Puka Nacua, we have to talk about as well, and what he's been able to do in the absence of Cooper Kupp, and then also getting Cooper Kupp back. He's kind of kept chugging along too. And Tutu Atwell, who at one point we were like, why in the world was this guy drafted in the second round, has kind of come along nicely this season for them too. So that's why I said earlier, they play a lot of 3 receiver sets. Those guys are all going to be on the field a ton together. They got a decent tight end in Tyler Higbee, who makes some money too. The offensive line is very bad. I think that, Highsmith and Watt should be able to have their way with the offensive line. It's going to be about how quickly the ball can get out of Stafford's hands. But I do think when you look at this team, the first thing that I'm looking at is that receiver trio and how they're going to match up with the Steelers secondary.
Yeah, same. I think you're looking at a game where Stafford's probably going to throw the ball between 40 to 50 times, if not more, just because you look at the struggles that they're having with running back, with the injuries right now. I expect that the Steelers are going to be able to bottle up the run game pretty significantly, which is going to leave the Rams to throwing the ball a ton, which obviously they can do. You just listed off some of the guys. Getting Puka Nacua this year was a instant sensation, especially shout out to BYU Cougars. He was able to kind of fill in for that role that they were missing while Cooper Kupp was out, and then Cooper Kupp comes back like he didn't even miss a beat. So I think that the secondary is in for a handful this game. I think that this is one where you're going to need to really just let Joey Porter Jr. Be on the outside full time. The real question mark though is like who's going to be on the outs or on the inside, excuse me, and are they going to kind of do more of a by committee on the inside? Like, are you going to see Chandon Sullivan and Patrick Peterson on the inside, or who's going to be on Kupp most of the game? Because when it comes to slot receivers, you are going to be facing the best one.
Yeah, we know it's not going to be Desmond King, so I can tell you that much. Chandon Sullivan, man. I mean, I don't know that I like. Obviously, I don't like either one of those guys going against Cooper Kupp. You're going to have to give a lot more. I think it might be Minkah more than anything else playing in the slot. That's kind of how I'm guessing right now. What we see happen, and you'll see KZ and Neal kind of operate as the two safeties, and Minkah's going to play a lot of corner in this one.
Also, who's going to cover Tyler Higbee out of the linebackers? Tyler Higbee, he's not like an elite tight end, but he's not somebody. He's not a slouch either. Like he can move.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, that was probably a matchup. I would say Keanu Neal. Maybe Cole Holcomb. I don't know. I mean, Quan Alexander potentially.
The pass defense is in for a day. We'll just say that. I think that they'll limit them. Yeah, it's gonna be a test. I think that with the issues that they're having in the run game right now, that's really what they're going to focus on. Which is an advantage for the Steelers in a way because it makes the team more one-dimensional, or at least it should. So it makes it easier to cover. But whenever you look at like who they have, the personnel wise of who you're going to be covering, it's not going to be easy regardless. So that's the key matchup you're looking at. Obviously, offensively, outside of Aaron Donald, if I did not know Ahkello Witherspoon played for the Steelers, I could not name another defender on the Rams. Like if you just like put a gun to my head, said name a middle linebacker, man, pull the trigger because I have no idea. I don't think that there's anybody that's significant on that defense outside of Donald that is going to be elite at their position. I think that the Steelers are still probably going to just struggle because of the way that they are. But I think that this is a defense that they could have an opportunity to show some improvement against if all things go right. But the problem is I don't know if I necessarily trust the Steelers offense to show improvement. I can hope, but I don't know that they're actually going to do it. But this is a defense where obviously I don't think that they're as bad as probably people thought they could be. And I don't think the Rams are as bad as probably people thought they were going to be throughout this whole offseason. We heard that they were going to be another one of the top picks contender for how bad they were. They ended up not being that bad, at least so far. But I think that this is a chance for the Steelers offense to be able to show some progress, not only in the run game. I mean, if they're trying to run up the middle, Aaron Donald's going to have a say about that. But I think that I would still like to see just improvement in any facet of the offense. In the passing game, I would really love that. And I think that they're going to get some help with Diontae Johnson coming back. And like I said last week, and I've said it several times on this show, Diontae Johnson is a quarterback's best friend. You said it too. He's just a guy that's going to find the soft spot of the defense, find that open space, and is going to be a reliable target for the quarterback. So I think that that's going to go well for Kenny Pickett. And we mentioned last week that it's going to go well for George Pickens. You're not going to get as much of the attention from the secondary on George Pickens now if Diontae Johnson could go. I think that there's an opportunity for the Steelers to really make a stride in this game. I just don't know necessarily if I trust them to do it.
Yeah, I know Ernest Johnson is one of their off-ball linebackers for sure. He's an okay player. Jordan Fuller, I only know because of Ohio State, one of their safeties. And I know they brought, what's his name back? John Johnson. I know they brought him back. And Kobe Durant's an okay corner as well. But yeah, I mean, there should be some exploitable matchups, you would think. But from the Rams side, Aaron Donald versus Mason Cole. Are we serious?
We're serious.
That's what's going to be happening on Sunday. So
you need to. Obviously, you're probably not going to run dead up the middle at all this game.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's just a bad recipe for success. And then Kenny's going to have to get the ball out quick because there's been several times this season where we see Mason Cole get blown up not playing Aaron Donald. So if he's playing Aaron Donald, I can only imagine what some of those plays might look like. Aaron Donald flying off the ball and throwing Mason Cole around like a rag doll. So who knows? We might be in for a rough go, but I think that there's a chance for the Steelers to surprise us a little bit in this one, at least offensively, because there's some spots they can expose on the Rams defense.
Well, let's go there right now then. Let's give some predictions. How do you think Sunday plays out?
I think this is going to be a hard-fought game, and mainly because you're going to have the Steelers' offensive struggles, regardless of the type of defense you're going to get. I still think you're going to have those growing pains that you need to get through as an offense. But I do think that the defense is also going to have their own lumps that they're going to have to work through when it comes to that secondary and really just the pass protection or the pass defense against that Rams receivers and Matthew Stafford. So I think that the Steelers are going to end up losing this one, unfortunately. I think that traveling across the country, coming off a bye, that sucks, especially to lose your first game out of the bye. But I just think that you're traveling to LA. I think that from what we've seen from the secondary, they give up big games to receivers all the time. And what we've seen from the Rams this year is they have at least two guys that can put up really big games for you. And so when you have both of them playing at the same time, I think that is a recipe for a disaster. And the Steelers secondary is going to need to play, I feel like, majority lights out if they're going to want to contain the pass game of the Rams. But I'm going to say that the Steelers are going to lose in a close one. I think that they'll be competitive, but I think that they're just going to get the best of them. And the Rams are going to win. Let's see. I will say 23-18.
18 was kind of a number that I had in my head. It's hard to envision them getting to 20 points right now, right? I mean, like,
it's tough.
Yeah, like they're going to need something from the defense or like a big play on special teams to set them up for points or something like that. I'm going to say a weird score. I know we're going to be on the edge of our seats, and I think that we're going to have to come up with something big late to keep them from kicking a game-winning field goal. I'm going to say the Steelers win 18-16.
That'd be good. So you're probably expecting them to limit the pass game pretty well for the Rams, if that's the case.
I mean, I think it's going to look a lot of how it has this year in games where they've been able to keep teams off the scoreboard, but maybe they get theirs in terms of the yardage. Like, I'm not saying they're going to hold down Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua in that passing attack by any means, but I think they're going to hold them to field goals instead of touchdowns.
Well, there you go. And
I think that's what comes out there.
If you only score 18, but your defense can do that, then that's enough to win. There's more to complain about, but that's enough to win the game. And that's all that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah. All right. I think that about does it, unless you have anything else Steelers related. Like Tyler said at the beginning of the show, be sure to check out year 6 of Rocking Around the 412. Link in the description for that. Over the first 5 years of doing it, we've raised over $25,000 with every penny going directly to kids in our area, providing Christmas 724 and 412 areas. And we give you guys some prizes for donating. We know for sure we're going to have some Penguin tickets, an Eric Carlson jersey, a Joey Porter Jr. jersey. So, donate. You've got to donate at least $10 to be eligible to win any of those prizes. So be sure to do that. If you cannot donate, please share the mission. You never know who eyes and ears are going to get on it. Also, last year and going forward, we would continue to do so, but we partnered up with the East Rochester Salvation Army, their angel tree that they do every year at Christmas. And we're really, really excited to continue to do that in the name of our late friend Dalton. Kaylee and Isla have been helping us with that. Actually, she already got 5 people to commit to adopting a tag from the angel
Awesome.
tree. So yeah, really good stuff. She's been a huge help and really look forward to her and Isla's involvement in this thing going forward. And then also we have Everything Custom Designs, our friend Haley Wagner's small business. Her Etsy and Facebook page links are below. You can get some custom shirts. I don't know about trick-or-treat bags at this point with how close we are. Aprons. You mentioned maybe like I don't know. I was thinking stockings. as
Stockings
well
might
potentially for
work.
Christmas. But like we know for sure, shirts, hoodies, long sleeve, short sleeve, doesn't matter. She can do all that stuff. Just not these bad boys.
Oh, I
not the
wonder
hats.
if she can do. I mean, I know there's a Christmas tradition of that a lot of people have of like opening up like pajamas. I wonder if she could do like some Christmas style pajama pants or something like that.
Hmm.
I don't know. We'll have to ask her, or you'll have to ask her if you want to check that out. But yeah, go check out the link. She can do it. My mom even did. So little did I know. We've mentioned
And
that a couple times.
I saw her comment on something else. I think she was trying to get something else from her too. So your mom might be a big fan, returning customer at this point.
Yeah, everybody
But there
should
we
be.
Go. Go check out another video that is popping up by us. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Leave us a 5-star review if you're listening somewhere else. But another video, whether it's this week's Penn show or whatever else, depending on when you're watching this, will be popping up right now. And we will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.